here, now, at ease, at peace, natural, silent. Come back to that. When you are active, when you are practicing. Recently, I have been talking to a friend who has been doing practice quite for a number of years. And he, with his practice, is quite capable of pushing himself then into another altered state, relative good state, which is good, which is not necessarily for everybody the approach one has to go, but if one goes on again and again, then gradually that changes also the psyche. But then there were some problems in his life we were discussing, and I commented on it. And at the end of all the discussion, he said to me, so that means it's like going back to the basics. And I said, yes, exactly. Going back to the basics. Actually, that's what I'm doing all the time. Bringing people back to the basics. The simple basics of learning to be consciously conscious here, now, somehow or other, and let go, relax. We can learn all these intense practices, complicated practices, exotic practices, but still we have to somehow master the basics. Once the basics are really mastered, then the road is clear. Whatever you practice, whatever technique you practice, whether you just are silent and open without any practice, without any technique. The basics is that we have to master. The basics means that we have a good look at ourselves and see how we are disturbing that natural being in the present, is being obstructed by our mental activities, by our emotional reactions, by the stuff that we are getting so involved in and worried about. And the job is really to see all that and learn to let go, not to be attached to all that, not to obstruct that natural, basic, peaceful beingness, peaceful and joyous beingness. And I'm hammering on that all the time, on those basics, for that's really what is necessary most. It's most needed. All these practices we can do, but even if you do techniques, advanced techniques, when you do it, always remember it's for the purpose of making it easier to connect with the essence, timelessly now, and then let go. If the practice helps that, then it is very good. But if we are not reminding ourselves that it is for that, we can practice and achieve all kinds of things. But somehow or other, sooner or later, we have to turn the attention back and look at ourselves and see what's going on and learn to remove what is obstructing that natural beingness. That is the basics because I'm talking like this, I remember once another man who also sometimes gives satsangs has been telling to friends of mine, yes, Werner, satsangs, they are all right, but they are for beginners. And then I told him later, yes, you're right. It's for beginners, but in a way, if we are really sincere, we remain beginners all the time, because wherever we get, there's still that infinity. And looking at that infinity, you're always a beginner. And this basics I'm insisting on, this is for beginners, for people who have done some work, and for so-called advanced sadhaks, it's always the same. If we don't master that, then we are missing the main part. Even if we get some success in our practices, can get into states, can develop certain abilities. If the basics are not mastered, then it may even become more difficult. I mean, if somebody is able, through the meditation, to push himself, herself into a state of great quietness, then it is useful. And if somebody comes back to that again and again and again, gradually, automatically, it will have its effect and change the mechanisms that are there, that are disturbing, the destructive mechanisms. But it makes it even much more efficient if we always remind ourselves. Okay, it's very nice if I can have those peaceful states, but it's a state that comes, it's there for a moment, it goes, I'm pushing myself into it with my practice, but what is needed to have that vigilance, to look at oneself, also when you are not practicing, to be honest with oneself. Because when we are honest, we see the tendency is there out of habit to always make others responsible for what is happening to us. Instead of admitting, okay, I brought it about. I'm doing that to myself. And now I learn not to do that anymore. That is the job. That is the basics we have to master, no matter how advanced we are in spiritual practices. If we don't do that, we can go on and on. Practicing in the long run. It will have some benefit, but we could, with that same investment, if it's directed wiser and comes directly to the source, could get much more out of it. I just thought I share that with you. It really was a moment that, yes, he's totally right. And he was a little bit desperate and said, yeah, but then I have to come back to the basics. Yes, that's what we have to come back to. Master the basics and the road is clear. From then on, it goes on joyously, playfully, without resisting all the time what is happening, without being in tension all the time about wanting to achieve something, being angry and frustrated for not getting it, or otherwise being very proud and egoistic about achieving something or other. Here now, at ease, at peace, natural, silent. Come back to that. When you are active, when you are practicing. That leads me to a question I have discussed, or I have not much discussed. That friend wrote to me about, previous, they were capable of doing a lot of satsang, and now they are not doing it. They have a conflict with it, but then another teacher has said, one should not make an effort to practice because it misleads. No, the one who makes effort has to disappear. And so at the end, there is a bit confusion about practicing, making an effort. Who is making an effort? Should one make, or is it not useful at all? It has been discussed a lot, that question, in recent times. And there is a lot of teaching going on that you should not make any efforts. Let it happen. If it happens by itself, then practice. If it doesn't happen, don't practice. Don't try anything. Don't do anything. It's good to know that as long as I, as a person, I make efforts even for a good thing, and even very sincerely to go deeper spiritually, the ego will sneak in. For whatever we are doing, if we are hooked on that level, it's flavored by the ego. But it's also flavored by the ego when I decide, no, don't make an effort, because an effort is only coming from the ego, but there is also the ego in I don't need to make an effort. Make an effort knowing that you need not achieve anything. Make an effort knowing that it helps us to see, to become more alert. It gives insight. And I become more and more aware how much of effort I'm making, how many efforts I'm making just to keep that experience alive where I'm locked in, where I'm not happy, where I'm suffering. We keep on creating and recreating that cage, that reality. And we make a lot of effort to do so without being aware of it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong to make an effort to become more alert, to become more aware. But you can go about it in a playful way, not, I want to achieve something. I've been doing that a lot. It was very painful. Eventually, I had to let that creativity go. And finally, totally. No, you can make your efforts, but make it playfully. Make it with the awareness this effort is not like an investment. It's not a business. It's not that they make efforts and after that I get my reward for it. Served on a nice platter called enlightenment or awakening or whatever. No, the effort is to become more aware what's going on. It gives insight if we make the effort in a good spirit, in a proper way. So don't be afraid of making efforts, but you can also relax in between. It's not that you have to make effort. And the more we learn to go about playfully, the less it looks really like an effort. Still, the mind needs to get pushed time and again a bit. Okay, now, instead of doing some kind of or other of things that is just pulling my attention away to escape from the confrontation with the self, with the mind, with the person, with looking what's going on there, just go for it. But go for it in a harmonious way. Don't push yourself on and on. Practice until you are so angry and frustrated that you throw it all away. Each one find for themselves the proper balance between withdrawing, letting the world be, letting the mind be, letting all the worries be, and be here now, quiet, relaxed, and open, as good as we can. The balance between that and between going out, being with people, having a fun time. Just remember, also there, this is momentary appearance. Bring the attention to that which makes the experience possible, as good as you can. That little effort is needed, that we push ourselves again and again, and don't think, when it's the right time, practice will happen by itself. Then once in a while we sit down and feel good about it, but it doesn't have the value and the power of somebody who is practicing regularly. You still can increase in times where we have more time, where we have more energy, where we feel like doing more. We can decrease when it's getting more difficult, finding the time when we just don't have the mood for it, but keep it on in spite of that to some extent. It is very helpful. It gives the current underneath that is always there, that makes it easier to be alert in our daily life, to be aware, to watch what's going on and learn to detach from them, learn to let go from it, learn to let it go. All that stands in the way from naturally being here now. So, don't be afraid of effort, but don't overdo the efforts. Go about it as playfully, as lightly, as cheerfully as you can.